Hello everyone out there, this is James, and today we're going to be talking about some CEDH. That's Competitive Commander, also known as Elder Dragon Highlander for some of you older Magic players. And today I'm going to be your commander in going through a CEDH deck. Today's deck is Thrasios, Triton Hero, and Tymna the Weaver. Let's take a look at Thrasios. Cheat sheet. Thrasios Triton Hero is a green and a blue for a 1/3 with the ability to pay 4 colorless. You get to scry 1, then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, put it on the battlefield tapped, otherwise draw a card. Now, for the most important thing about this card, it has the ability Partner. What good commander doesn't have its own lieutenant? Cheat sheet. Tymna the Weaver. It is 1 white and black for a 2/2 lifelink. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you may pay X life, where X is the number of opponents that were dealt combat damage this turn. If you do, draw X cards, and once again it has Partner for a 2/2. Now, that's all the cheat sheets I need. The rest of it I can say by heart. Tymna in this deck is not a very big part for me. It is mainly our partner for the colors, black and white. There is another partner that we could use in this situation, but we like to keep things on a low converted mana cost. Now, with that being said, Thrasios is definitely low converted mana cost. These two together gives us the total colors of green, blue, black, and white for our competitive commander deck. Now, this commander deck has the ability of turning 1, turn 2, turn 3, and turn 4, etc. so on from that. But turn 2 to turn 4 is our range of wins. That's usually when the deck wants to win, as long as there isn't anyone trying to counter our stuff. But even then, sometimes we have the counter magic to back it up. Now, I am going to be doing a deck tech today. I'm going to run you through every single card in the deck. And that way I'm going to go over what is good, what is bad, what are things that may be changed in the near future. Keep in mind, this is a competitive deck with a competitive price point. This deck, at the current time, will run you about $5,000 to $10,000. Now, with that being said, there are some budgets that you can make to the deck to make it a lot more affordable and a lot more playable. There's different things you can do. But with that being said, we're going to get into the deck tech now. But before we do that, here's a little warning for all of you casual players.
Warning. This deck is not for casual. This deck is very expensive and not for friendly pods. Do not bring this deck out around small children. It may cause a lot of salt and the leading of other players to give up hope and quit life altogether. Discuss the level of your pod before playing this deck. May cause cargo time due to the amount of shuffling. This deck is not for the casual player and will lead to short games. This deck is not fun for other players playing pre-constructed decks. This deck is not guaranteed to win on any specific rate to do Kess against cheating and may vary. Also, I don't condone cheating and highly advise the restraint from doing so. Finally, if you took the time to read this, I apologize for my spelling. This video was made for fun and love of the game.
Now that that's our warning, let's get into it.
Mana base. It's the one thing that is most important in every commander deck, no matter if you're playing casual, competitive, or tabletop. Without a good mana base, no matter how strong, expensive, or cheap your cards are, you're not going to be able to use them. So for us, to make sure we have a perfect mana base, we start off with all 10 fetches, which are Bloodstained Mire, Flooded Strands, Windswept Heath, Arid Mesa, Wooded Foothills, Marsh Flats, Verdant Catacombs, Polluted Delta, Scalding Tarn, and Misty Rainforest. These allow us to make sure that we get perfect mana if we only have one fetch in opening hand. If we need green, black, white, or blue, we're able to get it. If we have something like Scalding Tarn, even though we don't run red, the blue will allow us to go and get any of the colors that we need. If we need blue white, blue black, blue green, etc., it allows us to get those no matter what, so that way we guarantee our turn 1 to have the mana that we need. Not only are fetches good for that source, but we do have stuff that allows us to mess with our lands out of our graveyards, whether it's to help ramp, etc., that we're going to be coming into play later on, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But fetches are definitely an important part to this. The things that we can fetch for: Hollowed Fountain, Breeding Pool, Bayou, Tundra, Scrubland, Tropical Island, Underground Sea, and Savannah. We run every one of the duels to that way we save on life. Now, if you're looking for a cheaper option, you can replace all the duels with shocks, and if you need cheaper than that, then maybe this format is not for you. This format is very fast and very aggressive, and to do that, sometimes you have to spend a little bit of money. Or you can always use proxies depending on your group and if they allow proxies. For me, I have the 6 dual lands that the deck can run, and I choose to run Hollowed Fountain and Breeding Pool as my 2 shocks. I really need green and blue early game, so that's why I chose these 2. White, I do have a little bit of white, and I don't have a lot of white cards, so getting that little extra white mana for whenever I do get it is absolutely necessary. Now the argument is where you can exchange the shock lands to other lands. There is a slot there that you can mix and match, but for me, these are the fetchable lands that I run. As far as for our evergreen lands, I guess you call it, we run Exotic Orchard, Command Tower, Forbidden Orchid, Mana Confluence, and City of Brass. Our Mana Confluence and City of Brass both are pretty much exactly the same. It's just lands that taps for any color, allows us perfect mana fixing early game. In late game, we may not have to pay the life anymore on the Mana Confluence due to Yavimai's Coast or maybe an Orborg that we do run in this deck. So this is just really good mana fixing for us, and we really don't care about the life loss because the game usually is over by turn 3 to 5, so we really don't have to worry about losing too much life on these. For Forbidden Orchid, just another tap for any color for us. We don't mind giving our opponents a 1-1 because once again the game's usually over pretty quick, and sometimes giving someone a 1-1 can win favor because we all know the politics that are revolved around Commander. Some people it's off-putting. For me, it's probably my favorite thing about it is talking, negotiating, and trying to get there. Command Tower, I really don't know what to say about it that hasn't already been said. It's a commander staple. It's in every commander deck except for a few monocolors where you really don't need a Command Tower because it does the exact same thing as a basic land and also can hinder you in some of those situations. But for me, it's a land that taps for any of the 4 colors I need with no drawback. It's solid. Exotic Orchard, when you're running more than 1 or 2 colors, is a really good card for the simple fact that in a pod, chances are people are going to be running your colors, and this allows you to get some of those colors fairly easy. And the longer the game goes, someone's probably going to run a Command Tower or an Exotic Orchard of their own. If they have an Exotic Orchard and you have a Command Tower with an Exotic Orchard, you're set. Like, your land does exactly what you want it to do. Now, as far as our support lands, we run Water Grove, Yavimai, Cradle of Growth, Orborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, Gemstone Cavern, and Ancient Tomb. As far as Ancient Tomb goes, the most iconic thing to do in Commander for maximum salt is to play a turn 1 Soul Ring. This allows us to get the turn 1 Soul Ring with not as much of the salt. You can pay 2, tap it, deals 2 damage to you, but you get that 2 mana to play your Arcane Signet on turn 1, or possibly a Soul Ring off of this, plus a 3-drop rock. It just really excels us to the turn 3 on turn 1 that we absolutely need, and it goes really good turn 1 with our 0-drop artifacts that can produce different mana. The 2 damage, once again, we're not too worried about the life loss. It's just that extra ramp early game that we really want. Gemstone Cavern, the main reason we run this is for if we're not going first. And let's face it, sometimes we can't set the game up to where we always go first. So this right here is really nice if you can have it in opening hand. As soon as the game starts, chances are it's going to be the first card you draw. But if it is in your opening hand, you can start with it in play after discarding card, and it's an evergreen. It taps for any color, and you're set for the rest of the game. A late game, we might be able to discard this for a Mox Diamond, or just play it as it is, and you get a colorless mana out of it. It's not bad. Orborg and Yawgmoth are both the same card for me, except for one's for green, one's for black. I wish they would do more, but I understand why they don't. For this allows us to where later game, if we don't need our fetches, we can just tap them for mana. We no longer have to sack them to get the value out of it. Same thing for our opponents. Honestly, it doesn't matter a whole lot for them, depending on what kind of deck they're going. Maybe it is mana fixing for them, and maybe you can get some favor. But for us, it just turns everything into an overgrown plus whatever the land taps for. So it's not bad. Last, this is a flexible spot. Flexible spot. English is a very hard language. This one is Waterlogged Grove. I can pay a life, add a green or a blue, sack it, and you draw a card. Now, the draw a card ability is what I really want here. The green-blue, it's just my choice of early game. Those are the two biggest colors in the deck. We're basically a two-color deck with a splash of green, or a splash of white and a little bit of black, mainly for tutors. But a lot of our tutors put our cards on top of our library. If we do have this out, this allows us to sacrifice it and draw a card, which gets whatever we wanted tutored into our hand just that much quicker. That is our lands. Now, if you'd like, I'm going to put up a chart here. If you take a look at it, with our land base currently, this is our mana production. We can get 12 colorless, 22 green, 22 white, 24 black, and 24 blue, which gives us an almost perfect mana base for exactly what we're doing. And if you go to show all colors, it'll just add red in there, which we don't really need, and we don't really care about producing red. There's really nothing for us for red. Don't be deceived when you see the red down in the bottom where it says card types. That's just to identify each individual card types. But for mana base wise, you really couldn't get a more perfect mana base with what we have here, unless they start printing more evergreen cards, or we may upgrade on some of our shock lands depending on what comes out in the future. But right now, we're pretty much balanced with this mana base. And if you look in the card types, we're only running 28 lands. That's because a lot of our creatures and our artifacts are going to be tapping lands for us. Speaking of creatures and artifacts, that's what we're going to be heading to next with our Mana Rocks. It's time for Mana Rocks and Mana Dorks. First, we're going to start off with our Mana Rocks. We're running Mox Diamond, Chrome Mox, Lotus Petal, Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, Fellwar Stone, Talisman of Dominance, Arcane Signet, and Soul Ring, for a total of 9 Mana Rocks that we can actually use for mana over and over. I say this because you'll see later on in the video, there is another artifact in the deck that does allow us to produce mana, but it comes at a hefty cost, and I don't really consider it a Mana Rock more than a combo piece. First off, we'll go ahead and get it out of the way. Soul Ring, this one is a very beautiful one. This one was a gift, and it means a lot to me, and it'll always be in this deck for as long as I have this deck. You don't have to have the blinked out ones, even though it does make it look so much better. But Soul Ring is just a commander staple. It's in every commander, minus maybe 1 or 2. I have one deck that I don't run it in, because believe it or not, I feel like it slows me down. But in this deck, it does what I want it to, and it ramps us up. Arcane Signet, this one came in with Throne of Eldraine, and is now a commander staple and comes in every commander pre-con. If you bought yours at $30, I feel sorry for you, because now you can pick them up for $1. It's perfect. It adds 1 mana of any color to your commander's identity. It's the best 2-drop Mana Rock in my opinion. And the reason I like 2-drop Mana Rocks like this is because you can tap them immediately when they come out. Now with Fellwar Stone, it's exactly like our exotic orchid. It taps for any color that your opponent's lands could produce. If they've got command tower, they've got any kind of exotic orchid, then it just makes it to where yours. It's basically another Arcane Signet for us with just one little extra step. And for us, we're fine with that. It does fine, and it works out just right. Talisman of Dominance, this is a flex slot for me. I feel like you could run one of multiple talismans, but in my play with my local group and some of the hands that I've got, the blue-black combination of colors is exactly what I want. So if I tap out to play this, I still have the blue up for my Swan Songs and some of my other one-drop counter spells, and the black is needed for Ad Nauseam, which is a triple black spell. It also helps out with some of our tutors earlier game where we really want to ramp, but we don't want to take too much off to tutor. So I run the Talisman of Dominance. Mana Vault being next. This card right here, I'm kind of mixed emotions about. It is a very powerful card. One drop that gives you 3 right off the bat. It's a ramp for 2. It's basically like having another Mana Crypt, except for this one, you have to pay 4 to untap it during your upkeep. Otherwise, it's going to deal 1 damage to you. For me, I feel like 9 times out of 10, I either play it early game to get more rocks out, or I'm playing it late game to help me cast those big spells. The problem is, whenever I play it early game, if I'm not about to win and I need the extra mana, then I feel like it's in the way. I feel like it's a 1-drop that I'm not doing anything with, because I'm so afraid of, once it's tapped, not being done tap it, and that's a constant damage every turn that we go around the board. With that being said, we're usually not afraid of the damage, but I have had an Ad Nauseam take me all the way down to 1 thanks to an Angel's Grace, and then die at the very beginning of my next turn because I either can't afford to pay it, or I'm having to take that whole turn off to pay it to untap, and then dying by my opponent because I had to tap out for it. So currently, this is a good spot in the deck for those little extra ramps, but I could definitely see it coming out later in the future for better cards. So the next time we watch this video, who knows when, because if you go back and watch my old YouTube videos, I did a deck tech on it, and I thought it was something then. Now it's a whole new creature, so the next deck, I can't wait to see what it's going to be. But imagine this one coming out later on in the future. The Mana Crypt is kind of similar whenever we come to talking about damage on the flip side, but it does have that 50% chance of landing in your favor and not doing damage. But having a 0-drop tap for 2 and it untaps every turn is really nice. It's not as good as Sol Ring in my opinion, but it's better in the sense that it is free. Now, one thing I see a lot of people doing in their games is they'll play this turn 1 as a flex and with nothing else to do with it, and then they're taking damage at the beginning of their turn because they just wanted to put it out there. Honestly, this is a card that's fine to keep in your hand until you need it, because if you're playing it, you're just taking chance on taking damage, and in some games, 3 life is a big difference. Lotus Petal, this is a great card, and if you notice the background playmat here, this is the Lotus Petal Expedition, and one day this one will be too, just not today. A 0-drop that taps to add 1 mana of any color is awesome. One we're comboing and searching through our deck for everything. This is just a nice drop that we can put out to help mana fix so we can play our win cons. Early game, if we get that extra ramp to allow us to play a Hermit Druid on turn 1, it's not bad. It's really good, and it's really great for fast-paced decks. Chrome Mox is another one that I'm mixed emotions about. I know why it's good. I know why it has to be in the deck. But a lot of times I feel myself having artifacts or lands in hand that I can't use this with, and it just turns into a 0-drop dead card. Or when I do have cards that aren't artifacts and lands, it's cards that I want to keep, like a Demonic Tutor or maybe that counter spell, and I don't really want to give it up. With that being said, I have won a lot of games with this, being able to play it on turn 1 for a counter spell that I may not need later on. Last but not least for our mana rocks, we have Mox Diamond is all-star in this deck and probably one of my favorite cards to play. It's so powerful if you're running CDH or you're running a fast deck. This is definitely one that you want to play. The fact that it puts the land in the graveyard so that way we can mess around with it with our some of our mana dorks that we have. I can't think of the name of the creature right yet, but we'll see it shortly. Is just super powerful, and if you're running competitive, I highly recommend you run this card. I've enjoyed playing it, and it's definitely been one in there. It does come with a hefty price tag due to the reserve list, and I would absolutely love it if they removed the reserve list. It wouldn't bother me a bit if this card dropped down to a $3 card. I would put them in every commander deck that I have. Highly recommend picking this up. Mana Dorks is just short term for basically creatures that tap to add mana, and for that we have Arbor Elf, Noble Hierarch, Elves of the Deep Shadow, Avacyn's Pilgrim, Deathrite Shaman, and Birds of Paradise. First, starting off, we look at Elves of the Deep Shadow and Avacyn's Pilgrim. These are all pretty much the exact same card for us in this deck. It's just a 1-drop creature that can tap for mana to help accelerate us and mana fix us. So green is one of our more easier colors to come by, so having a green source that can produce different colors like the black or white is absolutely fantastic for us. I apologize for my language. So it's absolutely wonderful to have. It's great mana fixing. There's not a whole lot you can really go into detail. We don't care about the creature type or anything like that. Just the fact that it does gives us the mana fixing. I do apologize. I'm tripping over my own words. Noble Hierarch is right there with it, but this one's a little better for the simple fact that it does give us 3 colors instead of just the 2 or just the 1. The Exalted triggers, we really don't do a lot of combat, so we don't need the Exalted as much as other decks, but the fact that it's a 1-drop that adds the 3 different color combinations is wonderful. Birds of Paradise is probably the best one out of all of those for the simple fact that it is a creature that taps to add 1 mana of any color. I'd love to have 5 of these in the deck, but unfortunately with Commander they only allow me to have 1. This is definitely the all-star as far as 1-drops that you want on turn 1 if possible. Highly recommend. Arbor Elf is right there with Birds of Paradise for the simple fact that it allows us to untap target forest. Now with that being said, a lot of our dual lands are forest. You know, tropical highlands, savanna, etc. The breeding pools, you know, all those will allow us to tap, to untap, and possibly get 2 blue or maybe the 2 white, etc. So this guy, he's a house on his own. And last but definitely not least, we have the Deathrite Shaman. Deathrite Shaman, he's not only ramp, he's not only life gain, but he also inflicts each opponent loses life on this. He's absolutely wonderful. One thing that I have learned in my recent experience is that when you do exile land from an opponent's graveyard, it does use target, so that's something to be cautious about. I just had supper and I'm still enjoying it. Anyways, so this is wonderful because it adds 1 mana of any color, which is absolutely fantastic for us. Each opponent loses 2 life, or you gaining 2 life. That's just beneficial. You can use that late game to kind of recover some of the damage you've took off fetching, or if you're just needing to get some damage in, you can use it for that part. But really good inclusion upon this. Now, with our mana dorks out of the way, we do roam 1 card that isn't a mana dork or an artifact, and that is Dark Ritual. Dark Ritual, there's a big reason I use this card now. I didn't have it in there before, but it is really good because one of our creatures, which is Opposition Agent, allows us to get it out on turn 1. An Opposition Agent is definitely a taxing card. If you're a deck like this and you're fetching all the time, playing against an opposition agent, sorry again, is absolutely horrid. It's hard to do, and it's almost impossible to fight through. You can, but it's hard. So we ourselves run a opposition agent. Not only is it good for that, but we also use this with Ad Nauseam to help us get that little extra mana. Worst comes to worst, if you're not using it for that, you can use it early game to get out some of the early rocks that just help accelerate you through on if you don't have the 0 drops. So it's a nice inclusion. It may change later on depending on ban list and etc. But for right now, we use it in this, and it's not bad. Tutors. In any good deck, you're running tutors, which the fetch lands could be considered as tutors because they are tutoring up lands. That's why we call them fetch lands. You fetch to go get it. So why don't we call instant and sorceries fetch spells? I don't know, but here's where we are. We run a actually quite bit large sum of tutors because in this deck we want to ensure we get exactly what we need as soon as possible. Our tutor package consists of Neoform, Muddle the Mixtures, Demonic Consultation, Mystic Tutor, Limdol's Vault, Enlightened Tutor, Worldly Tutor, Demonic Tutor, Spell Seeker, Finale of Devastation, Eldamri's Call, Fabricate, Vampiric Tutor, and Imperial Seal. Now, there is a lot of tutors, and this is what makes the deck so consistent, is the fact that any of these tutors will probably get us exactly what we need. The Spell Seeker, being our creature tutor, is giving us a body, and it allows us to search for any one of these other tutors to get us to that combo piece or possibly to something else. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't get us any creatures, but it will allow us to get Worldly Tutor, Limdol's Vault, Demonic Consultation, Neoform, or something else. So, Spell Seeker is really good because it's an all-star. It'll get you what you need to get you what you need, if that makes sense. Vampiric Tutor and Imperial Seal. Both are identical in every form except for instant speed. And 1 mana being able to go get anything you want is absolutely key. That way you don't have to show anything. You don't give away any information. I wish Imperial Seal would get reprinted. There's no reason it shouldn't, but here we are. Imperial Seal is definitely one I plan on sticking a real version in. This one is currently a proxy. Looks really good. Yes, I know. But we carry both the 1-drop tutors in the black just because we're allowed to get something that we need without giving any information. Our creature tutors, specifically our creature tutors, we have Worldly Tutor, which is great. It goes get you a creature at instant speed. You do it at the end of your opponent's turn, so when you draw it that turn, it's fine. I won't go into a lot of details because they are exactly what they are. Eldamri's Call. Search for a creature, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. This one's better than Worldly Tutor for the fact that it puts it into your hand and not on top of your library, so it gets it away from instances of being milled before you're able to draw it. It does cost a green and a white, but that's okay. We don't mind. We're going to be running both of them. Finale of Devastation. This is not only just a tutor, but also can be considered a win con. What's the word? Basically, it helps you with your win con. It isn't the win con, but it helps you. If we have a Thassa's Oracle in our graveyard or in our library and we're holding a Demonic Consultation, a Tainted Pact, or something that allows us to mill out, this is going to get it and put it straight into play. So we don't have to worry about Thassa's getting countered because chances are this is going to resolve. And it's pretty. Neoform is a new addition to the deck. This one is as additional cost to cast. English is a fun language. Search your library for a creature with convert mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. Put that card on the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on it, then shuffle your library. For this right here, it's exactly like the Finale Devastation. We're looking to go get that Thasus Oracle combo, which is probably one of the more popular combos that you'll find in the CDH meta. It's just really hard to deal with, and we'll go over it in more detail once we get to Thasus Oracle. But for now, this is a piece that allows us to go get it. We have another combo that has a creature with convert mana cost 4, and this helps us get to it as well. This is a tutor that allows us to put it straight in the field. I think it's going to be a welcomed addition. I've not got to use it just yet, but it seems legit, and it seems like it's going to be welcomed. Fabricate. This is one that's probably teetering on the edge of being cut. Currently, I can only think of, off the top of my head, one card that we're tutoring for that is an artifact, and having it be a 3-drop tutor is a little rough. I very much prefer the 2 or 1 drops, or if it was an instant, I would much prefer it like that. But it is what it is, and this will go get that piece. This one might come out eventually, but currently it's in it. Worst comes to worst, we can go get a Soul Ring or a Mana Crypt. If we need that extra mana on the following turn, this allows us to get it. But the main tutor for this is going to be Lion's Eye Diamond. So this may be a piece that comes out for something else in the future. Enlightened Tutor. It's great. It's another one of our 1-drop instant speed tutors. This allows us to go get one of our enchantments or our Lion's Eye Diamond or whatever you need in that time of pinch. If you're dealing with Ad Nauseam, it allows you to go get some of them early drop rocks. Limdol's Vault has won me more games than not, just because it literally lets you put what you need on top of your library. If you can't read it, it's look at the top 5 cards of your library as many times as you choose, and you may pay 1. Put those cards on the bottom of your library in any order, then look at the top 5 cards of your library, then shuffle your library and put the last card you looked at this way on top in any order. So this allows you to pretty much set up the top 5 if you want without giving away information, and information is so important in Commander, so as much that you can keep concealed is better. Unfortunately, a lot of the 1-drop tutors, like Mystical Tutor and Enlightened Tutor, you have to reveal it, and it's understandable because 9 times out of 10, if I Mystical Tutor for a dramatic reversal, they know what kind of combo I'm going to go get. If I tutor for a demonic tutor to go get it, that's awesome, but that means I'm having to go through a couple extra steps just to keep it hidden, and it might be too late. But Mystical Tutor being a 1-drop is more than welcome, and I'll take all the 1-drops I can. This one technically is a tutor because it allows us to name a card and exile cards off top of the library until we hit it, but a lot of times we're going to be using this to go get our Thasus, or we're going to get it after Thasus Oracle has hit play, and we're going to use this to exile top of our library. With that being said, I have had situations to where I needed 1 piece, and this allows me to get it and put it in my hand at the cost of losing a lot of cards, but if it's a game-winning piece, it's perfectly fine. I've done it. Sometimes you have to play the card the way it was designed to be played. Muddle the Mixture. This is one of my favorite card types, and what I mean by card type is it has options. I love cheap cards that give me options. It's a counter spell for 2 or a tutor for 3, and that's why it's good. If I need to counter something, I absolutely can, because if you're holding a tutor in your hand and you need to counter something, and especially if it's a Mystic Tutor, you're putting it on top of your library, there isn't a whole lot you can do. So if I don't need counter magic, if I'm playing a creature-based deck, I can use the Transmute and tutor up for a Thasus Oracle, Isochron Scepter, or anything really 2-droppy, even if it's a demonic tutor. It's just a very flexible and good card, and I can definitely see why it is a competitive card. And last but not least, in our tutor package, we have Demonic Tutor. This is probably the most iconic tutor. This is the one that you see. Maybe not this edition, but this is definitely the one that you see in most Commander decks overall. If they're running black, they're running Demonic Tutor. If people can have it, afford it, etc. This is the card. This is the tutor that we all know and love. removal. Removal is the best way of getting rid of something that you don't like, and sometimes our opponents can have some pretty nasty stuff. So for our removal package, we play Assassin's Trophy, Chain of Vapor, Cyclonic Rift, Force of Vigor, and Abrupt Decay. Now, with that being said, we don't have a lot of spot removal. That's because our counter magic is still a pretty decent sized package. So, for our removal, we have Abrupt Decay. It can't be countered, destroys non-land permanents with convert mana cost 3 or less. I guess I could hold it in front of the camera. The fact that it can't be countered makes it so good. There's so many times that they have something, it's like, well, I have counter magic, or you can't do nothing about it, and having this at instant speed blow something up is an absolute must in any black-green competitive deck. I just see no reason why not to run it. New to the list here recently is Force of Vigor. It destroys up to 2 artifacts and or enchantments. If it's not your turn, you can exile a green card from your hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. This was not on my deck list for the longest time. It wasn't even in my radar. But in some of your play groups, you'll find more and more artifacts and enchantment based. Now, I don't really mind if my opponents are ramping or even getting draws off me at Rustic Study. What this really comes in handy for is for Urza decks or Winter Orb decks or Static Orbs, stuff that locks your lands down to where you can't do anything. Having something like this where it's free and doesn't cost you anything allows you to remove those before it's your turn without having to pay that mana that you've held on to so long. So this right here is a solid addition to the deck. Cyclonic Rift, if you own it, you're playing it. This one is a prettier version because we like our pretty shinies. We have a joke that if it's foil, it does double what it's supposed to do, but we don't play it like that, of course. 9 times out of 10, I use it for its 2-drop ability, but if we do have enough ramp, being able to bounce everyone else's board where they have to restart, this spell might as well say take an extra turn and then bounce everything, because everyone's having to take another turn to get reset up, restarted. If someone's comboing off, this is a really nice way of saying, hey, hold on a minute, I want another shot at it, and it's great. I love Cyclonic Rift. It's won me more games. Chain of Vapor. This is a wonderful card. I've recently just added it to the deck. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hands. Then the permanent's controller may sacrifice land. If that player does, he or she may copy this spell and may choose new targets for the copy. For as long as I've seen this played, I think only once have I ever seen the opponent sacrifice a land to copy it and do it again. Most of the time you're doing this early game and lands are tough enough already to get a hold of. So it's a 1-drop bounce a non-land permanent, which is super strong, and you don't really have to worry about it coming back to bite you. With that being said, even if it does, you sack a land, do it again, chances are they're not going to do it twice. And last but not least is the Assassin's Trophy. This is the remove all spell. It literally targets permanent opponent controls. You can't blow up your own stuff, unfortunately, like we used to do with Path of Exile to help you ramp, but the fact that you can destroy a permanent, if they're going with Mazes In combo, you can, or I guess you call it a combo, you can blow up the Mazes In, don't have to worry about it anymore, unless they have a great recursion. But anyways, you get what I'm saying. Like, the fact that it destroys a permanent opponent controls is absolutely fantastic. And with a lot of these heavier competitive decks, there's not a lot of basics in it, unless you're running monocolor decks, or 2-color decks at that. So pretty much chance, like, they're not going to go to get a basic. But even if they do, you're getting rid of something so much more. So, Assassin's Trophy is welcomed. Counter magic. So, with this, we have quite a bit of counter magic. We run Force of Negation. We run Force of Will. We run Mana Drain. Fierce Guardianship. Dispel. Swan Song. Mistcast, Stifle, and Pact of Negation. We run a total of 9 counter spells alongside of our removal. Now, the important thing is to divide this up, because we really like free magic. And Fierce Guardianship, Force of Negation, Force of Will, and Pact of Negation is our free counterspell package. Pact of Negation, whenever you're about to combo off and they're like no and you're tapped out, having it is absolutely bombs. Granted, you don't need to pay the 5 mana on your next turn if you're winning this turn. But remember to pay that 5 mana, because if you don't, this could just be your own death certificate. Force of Will, we know it well from Legacy and Magic of Old Days. It's another one of those free counter spells. If it wasn't for free by paying its other ability, it would not be as good, because 5 mana is something we will never do in CDH. We are never going to pay the 5 mana. You're always going to pay the 1 life and remove a blue card from your hand instead of paying its casting cost. It just is what it is, and by doing that, it gives us that extra free spell. Force of Negation is the same situation. That sounded nice. Except for it's only on your opponent's turn. On your turn, it's just counter target non-creature spell. On your turn, it is so much worse. It's worse than just a straight counter spell. But the fact that we can exile a blue card rather than pay its mana cost on our opponent's turn is keeping our opponents from winning the game. So this is one of those you just have to run. This is more defensive than it is aggressive. Fierce Guardianship. This is the new one. It's a counter spell, a non-creature spell if you control your commander. As simple as that. Now, with that being said, if you don't control your commander and you're trying to win elsewise, this is a 3 mana counter target non-creature spell. In competitive Magic, we run a lot of spells that don't seem good unless certain things are met. This, Force of Will, Force of Negation are those spells. If you can't meet the requirements, they're just worse counter magic. But the fact that they do have that chance of being free, we have to run it. Because in competitive, chances are you're going to be fighting counter wars. And that's exactly what it is. It feels like Wizards really battling it out with spells. Mana Drain is more of a ramp spell than it is a counter spell ever would. I've countered so much stuff with this that I honestly don't care if it resolves or not. If your opponent plays a 5-drop 5/5 with no abilities and they have to sacrifice it at the end of the turn and it enters tapped, we're going to counter it. Not because it's good, but because of that ramp. That ramp is so good, and that's why we want to counter it. Now, with that being said, sometimes you just do need to counter something and you don't care about getting the mana. But for ramp purposes, if we counter something that you're playing with this card, don't take it personal. We just want the mana you spent to use it. Stifle. Counter target activated or triggered ability. There is a counter spell out there that I can't think of the name off right hand that counters a spell activated or triggered ability, and it's good, but it's 3 mana. Where this right here is 1 mana at instant speed to counter an activated trigger ability. That doesn't seem powerful, but it is, and sometimes it can buy you that turn. If your opponent's about to Isochron Scepter, go infinite with Dramatic Reversal, you can stop it from activating. If your opponent's running Jorah and they're about to make infinite combat, you can stop that first combat triggered ability. It can stop Thassa's ETB. There's so much stuff that this can do and will do. And so far, I've enjoyed playing it a lot. So if nothing else, play it for the fun of it. Mistcast. Counter target instant or sorcery unless they pay 3. A lot of times where we're comboing off or trying to win on turn 3, 4, and 5, they just don't have the mana to pay for it. So this is just a 1-drop spell that allows us to keep countering back and forth. And sometimes you just want to counter it so they pay the 3, so that way your next and your real counter spell actually goes through, so they don't have the mana to fight back. Swan Song. Beautiful Swan Song. This is a Secret Layer edition. Counter enchantment, instant, or sorcery, and they get a 2/2 bird. A lot of the reasons we run this is for the fact that it is a 1-drop. It is unfortunate that we can't get a creature, artifact, or planeswalker, but sometimes the instant or sorcery is what we're countering. The enchantments, you only really have to worry about that if they're running infinite mana combos, running, what's the card? It's 3 mana, you pay 1 to untap creature. You guys know the card I'm talking about. But unless they're running situations like that, removal's better. But the fact that it's a 1-drop, that's why we run it. The same can be said for Dispel. This is literally just for counter magic battles. It's a 1-drop counter target instant, and we're just fighting back. If they're countering our stuff, this is countering their stuff. So if we have 3 mana and just a bunch of 1-drop counter spells, chances are we're going to win the counter magic battle. Drawing cards. Drawing cards. So, for this portion, this is us drawing cards and sources that we have to draw cards. We have Ad Nauseam, Rhystic Study, Brainstorm, Veil of Summer, Preordain, Mystic Remora, Jataxian Probe, Ponder, and we have Sylvan Library. These are some of our cards that we use to draw a card. Now, with that being said, Veil of Summer isn't necessarily a draw card. This card is more of a counter spell or maybe protection and so on and so forth. This is more of a support card than it is a draw card. It can draw us a card though if our opponents cast a blue or black spell, and that's not bad. A lot of the times though, I'm going to use this just like a silence. So that way me and my permanents I control gain hexproof from blue and black spells that I control, or that your opponents control to the turn. You get what I'm saying. But that one probably should have been with the counter magic. Let's start off with our enchantment based. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we only run 3 enchantments in this deck. I've got a little chart off to the side. And these are our 3 enchantments. We have Mystic Remora, Sylvan Library, and Rhystic Study for our draw. If you play Commander at all, you know exactly what Rhystic Study is. Now, for a long time, I wouldn't play Rhystic Study because I'm like, it's too slow. I want to combo off on turn 3, and I'm not playing this until turn 3. Well, the thing is, we have so many rocks and drops where I have played this on turn 1 more than I have played it on turn 3. And having it out turn 1, you're going to refill your hand so fast, it's definitely worth it. If you can get it out, I highly recommend getting it out on turn 1. But it's a solid card, and it's definitely going to refill your hand. Sylvan Library allows us to dig down at the beginning of our turn. Paying life to get rid of spells off the top of your library is perfectly fine with this situation, and Sylvan Library does that for us perfectly. Not only that, it allows us to see, it's like, okay, I'm going to draw into 2 dead cards. You can put those back, draw your 1 per turn, use a fetch land to shuffle them away and get into something else. Mystic Remora is fun. It's only out for a little bit of time, but for the most part, if they're casting non-creature spells, you're guaranteed to draw a card. I've never seen someone pay the 4 for a Mystic Remora. So it's definitely one that you want to get out early game whenever everyone's playing their Soul Rings or Signets, and you get the most value there. I have seen turn 1 this be dead, but then again, you're only paying 1 to keep it around for the first go around, then 2. Usually by the 3rd turn around, you're probably going to sack it, and that's fine. It's pretty solid for what it does. Jataxian Probe. This one right here is not only a 1-drop draw card that you can pay 2 life with instead of, basically it's free, but you also get to look at target player's hand. And this is really great if you got that one person in your pod, I'm not going to mention names, you know who you are, who always just foils your plans. But this allows you to draw a card and lets you know if you have a clear path, or maybe even to see how close they are to comboing off. Ponder. Ponder is a solid card. To look at the top 3 cards of your library, get a chance to shuffle them and draw a card, is basically getting 4 chances to draw a decent card. And this deck, I'm perfectly fine pondering on turn 1, fetching on turn 2. It's fine. I like it a lot. Ponder gets there. Then we have Preordain. Once again, we're still in the same realm like Ponder. If you're a Storm player, you know what kind of cards these are. Scry 2, then draw a card. Gets 2 of those cards off the top that are just bad. Lets us dig a little deeper. And definitely helps you get there quicker. Brainstorm. This card is really good if you have some dead cards in hand that you just know absolutely isn't going to take you anywhere. To draw 3, put 2 bad ones back on top, play your fetch, shuffle it all back in, is absolutely great. Highly recommend running Brainstorm. And last but not least, we have Ad Nauseam. Now, this is one of the powerhouse draw cards. This is the reason we run the 1-drop Mana Vault. This is the reason for Dark Ritual, to help us get there just a little bit quicker. It combos very well with Angel's Grace, allowing us to pick up our whole deck. One could even say that this and Angel's Grace is a win condition, but honestly, it's just a great way for us to get to our win condition, to be able to pick up our library and put it in our hand. A lot of times when you do see the 2 play together, game is usually over. Because your life doesn't matter with Angel's Grace, it'll put you to 1. And you're absolutely fine if you're going to win that turn anyway. And the fact that it's instant speed, where you can have it all in your hand and dump all of your mana at your opponent's turn and have everything open on yours, it's a solid card. If you're running black and you're running white, I definitely recommend running it. Recursion. In this deck, we have 4 cards that allow us to continuously recur cards from our graveyard, or at least once or twice when we really need them. We're running Regrowth, Noxious Revival, Memories Journal, and Post-Mortem Lung. These 2 pretty much go together with a combo that I'll show you momentarily. Noxious Revival allows us to get our tutors back, or maybe a spell that got countered, for free. And that is fine, because we do not mind paying our life to get these spells back, because you put target card on from your graveyard on top of your library at instant speed. At the end of your opponent's turn, I'm going to try that combo again, or I'm going to get back that combo piece, or maybe get back a counter that was really good. You mana drain something for a ramp, and you're like, I'd love to do that again. Noxious Rival is just great. Or in situations to where you need your opponents to have a card on top instead of what they tutored for. This allows you to do that, to guarantee you see and know what they're going to draw into. Regrowth. This is great. It's a return target card from your graveyard to your hand. This is better than Noxious Growth in the sense that it puts it in your hand so you can immediately use it right then, and you don't have to wait around for it. Not to mention that beautiful artwork. Oh, that's amazing. Alright, now with this, I'm going to show you another card that's not recursion, but it really goes well with it. We're looking at Hermit Druid. Now, Hermit Druid isn't a card that a lot of Thrasios decks runs, but mine, it does. Mine is a homebrew that I've personally put together that has led me into CEDH. Now, when you do go into CEDH world, a lot of the decks are almost exactly the same. There is not a lot of differences, amazingly, because the cards that you run for it is pretty much the same. You have to have the same speed. You have to have all this stuff, so you're going to run all those 0 drops. But for mine, I'm not running any basics, so Hermit Druid in this deck pretty much allows me to activate its ability, mill my entire library, which usually means these 2 cards, if not in hand, will be in my graveyard. Having a flashback of 1 to shuffle up to 3 target cards from a graveyard into their owner's library is amazing. So for 2 green, I can activate, flashback, and put Postmortem Lunge or Thassa's Oracle or maybe another combo piece on top of my library. allowing me to guarantee that I'm going to get what I need. And the best part is I can activate this at source or instant speed, and I can flashback this at instant speed. Now, with that being said, there is a new card in the set that's come up that very well may make it into the next edition of this. If I had it near me, I'll show you. Let me see. I think I have it really close. Yes, here we are. Turn the Earth. This card is really good for what it does. It allows you to shuffle up to 3 target cards in graveyards. So it doesn't have to be just yours and just your opponent's. You can kind of mix and match in the fact that it gains you the 2 life. I really wish this was flipped though. I wish the flashback was 1 and the cost was 2. With that being said, this still is not bad. If it's in your hand, it's amazing. The fact that you gain 2 life off of it is great. This card will probably eventually make its way into the deck. I just don't know what to move right now. So that's kind of a maybe card to keep in the wing that you probably will be putting in later. Let's pull my playmat here. So keep an eye out. We'll get a good image of that one. This came from the new Midnight Hunt Innistrad set. Postmortem Lunge, when you get it on top of your library, it just allows you to get that Thassa's Oracle back, or whatever that creature back is that you need. But most of the time, this little combo is very dangerous. Literally, if you mess up, it's all gone. So make sure you have some kind of counter package in your hand, or something to make sure no one's going to mess with you when you do this. Because if anything goes wrong, it all goes wrong, and chances are you're going to kill yourself with it. So definitely, if this is something you're going to do, practice with it, work with it, or you'll end up like me and you'll kill yourself 50 times before you actually get to make it work. Support. So in this part, we're looking at our support pieces, pieces that allow us to get to where we need. First, we have Silence, Sensei's Dividing Top, Tainted Pact, Opposition Agent, and the one we've recently talked about, Hermit Druid. Hermit Druid we pretty much know a lot about because the last combo that we just talked about. This is a support piece to get us to where we're going. A lot of people consider it a win piece, but honestly, with it, you don't win yet. You have to get to where you're going. It's just one rock in the road to get to that win con. Opposition Agent, honestly, in my opinion, probably should be banned. But with that being said, I'm still going to run it. 3 mana for a 3/2 with Flash. You control your opponents when they are searching their library, and then you get to basically exile what they get, and you get to play it? Seems really busted considering it has Flash. I have seen this thing take someone's land on turn 1 while they're fetching. I've seen it take their Demonic Tutor. I've seen the 1 tutor that lets 2 players search, and it go get it, and you get a win con from it. It's just very strong, very powerful, and I'm surprised it ain't banned already. Especially if you can make your opponent search. It's really rough. Now, with that being said, if we're on the opposite side of this, we're hurting. Because almost every card in our library says search or fetch or go get something out of your deck. This card hurts us a lot, but we can use it to our advantage. Tainted Pact. This card right here is a helpful piece if we have our Thassa's Oracle out. Then it allows us to, on the stack its ability, just basically take your whole library and get rid of it. We don't have any duplicates in our library, so we can keep going. For those of you that don't know what Tainted Pact does, it basically allows you to draw a card or exile a card. Then you repeat this process until you decide to keep a card. So basically you exile cards until you're like, hey, I want to keep this one. Then it resolves and you're done. Or you can continue to exile until you exile 2 cards with the same name. So if you're running a lot of basics, you're probably not going to be able to do this because you're going to wind up exiling 2 forest, 2 plains, etc. until you just fizzle out. But since we don't run any cards with the same name, this allows us to go through our whole library, allowing Thassa's Oracle to win us the game. With that being said, sometimes you need that win piece, and this will allow you to go down until you get to it, or at least until you're like, okay, I need to stop here before I keep myself from winning. So this is a very good card. You can play it fairly, or you can play it with Thassa's Oracle. It's fine. Sensei's Divining Top is basically a looking glass. It allows us to look ahead in our deck to see what's coming. Maybe we don't need to fetch right now. Maybe that card that we're needing to win the game is coming up. Or maybe we've tutored with Enlightened Tutor, Sylvan Tutor, etc. And now we need to draw that card off the top of our library. This allows us not only to look deep, but to draw that top card. It is very strong, and for it being one colorless mana, we're pretty much guaranteed to get it out whenever we need it. Silence basically should come with a warning label over its mouth to let your opponents know, I'm about to win the game. Because instead of countering your win con, they try to counter this instead. Well, that's another counter you don't have to worry about. And if they don't counter this, and you do go for the win con, there's not a lot that they can do about it, unless they have something that's a permanent that does something about your win con. But this right here is just a solid card. It's like, hey, be quiet and let me take my turn. Speaking of support pieces, here's some combos that would be considered game-winning combos. We run the Ad Nauseam Angel's Grace combo. We run the Dramatic Reversal and Isochron Scepter combo. We also run the Auriok Salvagers and Lion's Eye Diamond combo. For the most part, Auriok Salvagers and the Dramatic Reversal, both of these allow us to get infinite mana, which then will sink into our commander, Thrasios, which then we can sink that infinite mana into the ability to scry our whole library, put all of our lands into play until we're down to nothing but a Thassa's Oracle, play it, and win the game. So these are all the same in that situation. These cards do the exact same thing. The Ad Nauseam combo is pretty much to allow us to draw our whole deck without having to fear of losing the game by going less than one. Now, let's take a look specifically at Angel's Grace. Angel's Grace is not only an Ad Nauseam piece, but this is also a protection piece. With Split Second, your opponents can't interact with you. So, if your opponent is playing a Thassa's Oracle to win the game, you can, in response, Angel's Grace, to keep them from winning, which usually means they're going to lose when they go to draw their next card. Now, with that being said, the same is true for just about any other combo. This is a great way of going fog for me. So your opponents will still die, you'll still live, and it'll be great. So Angel's Grace is used a lot of times with Ad Nauseam, but I think it could be used in other ways and be just as good. Now, with our support pieces being out of the way, let's jump right into our win cons, and we'll just continue doing that right now instead of cutting to a new piece. Our win cons are Thassa's Oracle, Walking Ballista, and Laboratory Maniac. Laboratory Maniac and Thassa's Oracle are really kind of the exact same thing, but Thassa's Oracle just does it better. Thassa's Oracle doesn't require you to draw a card when you have no library. It just says, hey, if your devotion is more than your library, you win the game, or if it's equal to. So getting rid of our library, playing a Thassa's Oracle is great, because unless they counter its ability, there's really not a lot that they can do once it hits. Where Laboratory Maniac, it has to hit, then you have to try to draw a card, and they can remove it in response or anything like that. With Thassa's Oracle, if they go to remove it in response to the ability, it dies, the ability resolves, and you win. The reason I have both of them in the deck is because with only having two win cons in the deck, which is Thassa's and Walking Ballista, that leaves me susceptible to people searching my library and plucking out two cards with Opposition Agent or any kind of search ability like that. So these two are one and the same. One is just kind of better than the other. Walking Ballista is kind of like our black horse, or a random card, I guess you could say. Walking Ballista is for when we make all that infinite mana and we don't have a lot to do with it. If our opponents have hexproof, or if they have a big creature base, or there's creatures that say, you know, we can't win the game, so Thassa's Oracle and Laboratory Maniac just isn't doing the thing. If we make infinite mana, we can use this to clear the board of creatures, possibly kill our opponents. Worst comes to worst, if we can't shoot them with Walking Ballista's ability, we can swing in with an infinite. And if we can't do that and we still have infinite mana, we can use our spells that we went over earlier, our Cyclonic Rift and stuff like that, to remove whatever is keeping us at bay. So Walking Ballista is that card that's going to get us through in that situation. Your win cons are kind of interchangeable, but those are the ones that I personally run.